Hi and welcome to Cherry Pie Math. This video is going to go over English vocab. If you're one of my 7 subscribers, that is like, where have you been these last 2 weeks? I've actually been moving. But if you're not, because like I said, I only have 7 subscribers, well, happy that you're here. Let's learn about some angles. Okay. So an angle, so I would start out this lesson usually if I had students in person by asking them, what do you think an angle is? And usually I get something along the lines of like, it's 2 lines together, and I'm like, oh, okay, so if I want a thicker marker than that. If I do this, so here's an line, and then it's together with another line, so let me give it some arms, yay, and it's holding hands with this other line here. And they're like, Mrs. Cherry, that's the wrong thing, and I'm like, yeah, I know. So tell me more about it. Well, how would you define an angle? Let's say someone has never heard of an angle. How would you describe it using geometrical terms, using terms that you would experience in geometry? So the official definition of it is this: an angle is the space between 2 rays that intersect at a point. And so they kind of get the right idea where it's 2 lines, I guess. And you do get angles by intersecting 2 lines, but it's really just if I have a center point and I have 2 rays that emanate from the point, the angle is the space between them. And usually we take the smaller, but you could also take the one around it. It's just the space created between those 2 rays that intersect at that same point. You can't have a third line in there because then you actually have 2 different angles that you're dealing with instead of just one. So that's the official definition of an angle: the space between 2 rays that intersect at a point. There's different kinds of angle pairs, I should say. So I'm actually going to cross that out and write angle pairs because they come in 2. So like we said, an angle is just that space. But there's different kinds of angle pairs, different relationships that you'll see between angles. And they will help you to be able to solve for missing angles in the future. So for example, supplementary angles are angles that add to 180 degrees, which for reference, 180 degrees is how much you have in a line. So this is 180 degrees. In the future, I'll make a video that goes over why we have 180 degrees, like, because it's kind of just an arbitrary number, like who said 180? And I promise there's a reason for that. It's just not going to be in this video. And then complementary angles are similar to supplementary, except that they add up to 90 degrees instead. Vertical angles, and I was trying to figure out how to describe this in words, and honestly, it's just easier to draw a picture. Vertical angles are the ones that are like this. So they share the center point. It occurs because you have 2 intersecting lines, I guess, and it's like, or if you're going to use the rays, they're like a mirror image, right? It means that this is the same as this angle and this angle. Vertical angles are those across from each other. Adjacent angles are just next to each other, so angles next to each other. And right angles are angles that measure 90 degrees. Which is not complementary because it is only one singular angle. So this would be a right angle, for example, and we usually denote it by like a little rectangle or a square in the corner there. Whereas complementary angles, you would have them add up to 90 degrees, but like this angle would be it plus this angle would be complementary angles because they add up to 90 degrees. Whereas in a supplementary, these would be supplementary. This angle and that angle over there would be supplementary because they add up to 90 degrees. Or 180 degrees, sorry. So there are some cool things about these. So we know that this adds up to 180 degrees. We know that complementary is that they add up to 90 degrees. Vertical angles I showed you are the ones that kind of occur across from each other. But one cool thing about vertical angles is that they're always congruent. They're the same. Adjacent angles are next to each other. And they don't really have any cool properties. It's just that they're next to each other. This measures just 90 degrees flat. Okay, so let's look at this picture and look for some examples. So for example, A and C would be vertical angles to each other. So we're going to do this, A/C, and B and D would be vertical angles of each other. Let's look over here. So notice that these are not vertical angles of each other because the vertical angles have to share those same two lines. They can't just have like another line occur with them. However, G and M together, if you added them, would be a vertical angle to F. But E and H are vertical angles because they're directly across from each other. They're vertical to each other. And then I and L and J and K would be vertical angles to each other. And I think that's all of the vertical angles in this picture. So let's look at supplementary. Supplementary means that they add up to 180 degrees. They don't necessarily have to be next to each other, but unless you're given exact amounts, like measures of those angles, I wouldn't assume anything. One thing about geometry is that they're super strict about assuming things. If you're like, oh, this picture looks like it should add up to 180, unless it's an actual line, do not say that. It's like a sin. So for example, this is a line, and this is an angle that's built off of that line, which means I can say with certainty that A and B are supplementary angles, or that C and D are supplementary angles. However, I can't say that because this plus this look like they add up to 180 degrees that they're going to be supplementary. That's assuming too much. Unless they're built off the same line, do not assume that they're supplementary, okay? So let's look at other examples. So E and F would be supplementary. F and H would be supplementary. I and J, I and K as well, because these are built off of a line, these are built off of a line, right? And then you have J and L and J and, or we already did J and I. I think that's all of them. We could also say M and G and E. That's also allowed because they aren't necessarily, you'd have to say all of them add up to 180 degrees. It's not a pair in this case. So that's kind of like an iffy one. If your teacher is just looking for angle pairs, I wouldn't include it. Complementary angles. So I'm going to bite my words here. I know I said not to assume anything, but when I built this is with the assumption that this is a right angle. So pretend it is. So if this is a right angle, that means this has to be a right angle as well, because 90 plus 90 is 180, which means that if one side is 90, then the other side has to be 90 as well. So I can say that G and M are complementary angles because we know that they have to add up to 90 degrees by default. Adjacent angles are anything next to each other, and they don't actually have to be congruent, or they don't have to be supplementary or complementary. So like A and B, A and D. Oh, I forgot to add A and D up here. And so I have AD and BC as well up here. Okay. Yeah, there's a lot of them. I'm only going to write these two because I'm too lazy. But anything that's next to each other. So like even G and M are adjacent angles. And then right angles, we have angle E. And that's a symbol for angle, by the way, is you kind of do like a, it looks like a less than, but the bottom is flat. So I have angle E, angle F, angle H. Not angle G and M because those add up to 90. Those are complementary, but they are not right angles. So some things to remember, there's usually more than one angle pair in each type of angle present. So if it's a vertical angle, often you're also going to have supplementary, and you might even have complementary in there, thrown in there. So just be careful about that. And also be careful of supplementary versus complementary. Like I personally, when I was making this video, had to double check which one was 90 degrees and which one was 180. I don't actually have a great way to remember that, other than I just remember supplementary is a bigger word. And that means that 180 is bigger. I don't know if that helps at all. Figure out something and you'll make it fine. Okay, I hope that helps, and good luck with your English vocab.